Hello, it's John Heaton, and this evening I'm going to do what I mentioned I might do a few weeks ago, come up with an imaginary set list for a John Lennon tour, which might have happened in maybe the fall of '81. So a couple of assumptions: that Milk and Honey, the follow-up to Double Fantasy, had already been released, and as you'll see, the lineup of those tracks might have been slightly different, particularly from Yoko. The other assumption is this concert, I think, is somewhere in England. I'm not sure where. And it's a bit of a dream set list, you know, and it's not particularly realistic. Also, you'll see I was influenced by a couple of... I saw The Cure on Thursday night, and they did 3 encores, and the first encore they did, they just played 4 songs from one particular album, so I've done the same thing on this. And strangely, there are tracks which maybe just don't fit on a live set list. So, for example, I thought about the tracks from Plastic Ono Band and ended up including none. And as you'll see, I've also concentrated on tracks which Lennon had not performed live in his lifetime. Okay? So, not always, but mostly. Okay? So, if you can imagine, the band is the Double Fantasy Band, with John on guitar, piano, vocals, Yoko vocals and keyboards, Earl Slick on guitar, Hugh McCracken on guitar, Tony Levine on bass, Andy Newmark on drums, George Small on keyboards, Arthur Jenkins on percussion, and a couple of backing vocalists. I can't remember the names of the guys who performed at Double Fantasy, particularly on the track Woman. There's a guy who did superb backing vocals. I would have him in the lineup as well, and maybe a couple of ladies, I'm not sure, but don't have the names. This is all imaginary, of course. So he comes on, be his first concert in England since the Beatles' rooftop concert in '69, I think. Comes on and does Nobody Told Me, which was the lead-off single from the Milk and Honey album, which would have been released by the time this concert happened. Follows it up with I'm Losing You, a very strong track from Double Fantasy, as we know. And then Yoko gets her first solo spot with I'm Moving On. Follows up with another upbeat song, so these are all kind of what I call side one songs to open the concert. I Don't Want to Face It from Milk and Honey, followed by Give Me Something from Yoko. And then I'm Stepping Out from John from Milk and Honey, and I had imagined this track had been fully fleshed out and was a fully worked out version by the time it came out on Milk and Honey, unlike the version we have available to us now. Then the concert would slow down a little bit with Woman from John, his classic ballad, a spirited rendition of Dear Yoko from Double Fantasy, and then Yoko would come to the mic and perform her superb new wave track Kiss Kiss Kiss. Then Lennon would go back to the past and perform a great version of Give Me Some Truth, and instead of George Harrison on guitar, it would be Earl Slick. Then Lennon would move to the piano and play dual piano along with George Small and do Watching the Wheels, and the crowd would go berserk because that's a big crowd favourite, followed by Starting Over, the lead-off single from Double Fantasy, top 10 hit in the UK. And then he would go back even further to the past to a Beatles song from '64 called Slow Down, a Larry Williams cover. And then, even more obscure, Lennon would do a superb rendition of A Shot of Rhythm and Blues, the brilliant Arthur Alexander track which the Beatles did for the BBC in '63. Then he would move back to Double Fantasy and do Clean Up Time, and the band putting in a really strong version of this, a bit like they did on the stripped down version of Double Fantasy. Dogtown from Yoko would be next, which turned up on Season of Glass, but I'm going to pretend it would have been on Milk and Honey because the track was originally recorded in '74. Then we have a real surprise. John is going to perform a brilliant version of And Your Bird Can Sing from Revolver. and that absolutely brings the house down. Then we have one of Yoko's best solo tracks ever, Yang Yang, from approximately Infinite Universe 1972. Brilliant band performance of that, followed by a great rendition of Crippled Inside, with George Small mimicking Nicky Hopkins' brilliant keyboard part. But this is a very long concert, and all I'm going to say is John and Yoko were really raving, couldn't wait to perform, and were really going to give the audience value for money, because this set list is extremely long. Then, a bit of a tongue-in-cheek inclusion here, going to have Lennon jokingly referring to the squabbles with his fellow Beatles post-split, and doing a brilliant version of Paul's Too Many People from the Ram album. And then he's going to go into do a version of Come Together, with Tony Levine supplying the Paul's bass line, doing a superb version, and I Want You from Abbey Road as well, to close the set. And then, similar to The Cure the other night, they did 3 encores, and I'm going to have Lennon and Ono do 3 encores tonight. And the first encore, Lennon's going to come up and say Mind Games. The album came out in 1973, and we're going to do a few tracks from that album now. And he would do Meat City, Free to People, Tight As, and the title track Mind Games. Because I think the tracks from Mind Games really would work in a concert setting, and I struggled to include anything from Plastic Ono Band or Walls and Bridges, to be honest, because I think they very much belong to the time in which they were written. Maybe it's because they're so personal, I don't know, but I didn't include anything from those albums in the end. The second encore, Lennon storms onto the stage and goes into Twist and Shout, and brings the house down, of course. Follows it up with the White Album track, Everybody's Got Something to Hide, except for Me and My Monkey, with the band, Earl Slick and Hugh McCracken in great form on this one. Hey Bulldog from the Yellow Submarine soundtrack, the Yellow Submarine album from January '69 is next. Then Don't Let Me Down, the B-side of Get Back, is performed. And then the second encore is concluded with Imagine, with John on the piano, not the electric keyboard, the proper grand piano, and does a brilliant version of this. And then he goes off and he comes back for a third encore, and Revolution, the fast version from the Beatles 1968, B-side to Hey Jude. Then we have Yoko taking the spotlight for Walking on Thin Ice, brilliant 6-minute version, Tony Levine doing a great bass line, and Yoko in great form. And then Grow Old Along With Me, a fully fleshed out version, not like the one we have on Milk and Honey, you know, with a full band arrangement, if you can envisage it like that, as the finished article. And I think it would have been a classic, and it still is a classic in its embryonic state. And then to close the whole concert, we have Power to the People, the single from 1971. So it's an absolute brilliant comeback from John Lennon and Yoko Ono. We're so glad to have them back on stage, and thank you for watching. See you next time.